So the edge cases, which are not that important in a startup or a small scale POC, are the crucial things for enterprise grade software. How do you handle the scale? So all of those things are still a challenge which AI has not solved. So those are the things where we as humans are still needed.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Accelerate AI. I'm the founder and CEO at Future AGI, and today will be talking in and out about building responsible AI with Swagata. So first of all, welcome Swagata to the show. Really excited to have you over here. For our viewers, Swagata is a principal data scientist, LinkedIn top voices in AI, and a very passionate, community leader and driving impact for women in AI. So Swagata, please tell us a little bit about yourself and amazing work that you have been doing in the Women in AI chapter.
Thank you so much for having me, Nikhil. Very excited to be part of this podcast. A little bit about myself. I've been in the data science space since 2017 and started my journey with being an associate data scientist for a healthcare company, and then moved and switched. And now I'm leading data science at Boomi. Apart from my job, like you mentioned, I'm really passionate about voicing opinions on and advocating for women in tech and women in AI now. I've built a community for women in data in San Francisco where we host and mentor young and people who want to switch careers to data for women, especially. Primarily because as I was growing up in my career, I was the only woman in the room, and it was sad to see not many women raising voice in changing AI and our future. A little bit about what I'm doing right now. I started my journey building, traditional machine learning models, logistic regression, and all that, and now all of that sounds archaic. Um, right now, I'm again, like most of us, working in the agentic ecosystem and trying to catch every buzzword that's coming up and how can we implement that. So currently, we are building multi-agent frameworks for Boomi, and we'll talk more about it in detail.
I think you have been in like around 8 years in AI, and that might be like 100 years in AI time now. So what has
Oh
been
yeah, yeah.
it's moving really fast. It's really, as you said, like it's really hard to keep everything what is happening. So what has been the most surprising thing that you have seen in the field to evolve with?
There have been transformational moments. Like in when I started, like people talked about the Transformers paper, and that was like a breakthrough in how models learn, and the long term memory, and that was, I mean, absolutely breathtaking. But it stayed pretty much stagnant for some time. We were talking about transformers, we were using those under the hood for a pretty long time. But what has been staggering is the past 2.5 years since ChatGPT came, and that has been really the pace at which things are accelerating now, the avenues it has opened up. That has been really the time it used to take for us to, like, let's say, build a simple NLP pipeline, doing the feature extraction and working through all these different layers and putting something in production used to take 4 to 5 months for making a good model. And now that can be done with a prompt. I'm not saying production level, because AI still hallucinates and all of that, but still the acceleration of building a good MVP or close to production has reduced so much. So that has been really shocking for me. And every day we see a lot of new terminologies come in. That was not the case in 18, 19, or even 21. So now we have to really move very fast to catch up. Now we are working on MCPs and agents, and God knows what's the new thing that's going to come up. So it's the pace at which things are moving is very fast, and the time it takes to build something for production has reduced a lot. Like now you have to build something, quick POCs, within a week or even less. So I'm very excited for it, but at the same time, very cautious about responsible side of thing. Are we using AI the right way? Is there a bias and all of those sorts?
So is it correct to say like AI has become more accessible? For example, like we have to first train a model, get the data out there. And now since using these large language models, those information are coherently still present. So we don't have to, still get it to learn very basic things out of the box, but actually give the knowledge that is there for our pipeline and it gets the work done. Is it something on the right, lines that you have been trying to say?
Correct, correct. AI has definitely become accessible. It has democratized a lot of things that previously only data scientists had access to because we knew how to work with data. Also, I feel like anybody now is making an agent or anybody is making LLM wrappers and calling themselves, uh, you know, becoming founders and of that sort. But working in the industry for a long time, I know that building a good wrapper, I'm not discrediting them for what they are doing. It's still work and it's still you're smart if you're able to build something. But it still doesn't when you're building something enterprise scale, there are so many edge cases that become really important that are not important for MVP, scalability, authenticity, handling the bias and this the robustness of the system. It can break at any time. So the edge cases which are not that important in a startup or a small scale POC are the crucial things for an enterprise grade software. How do you handle the scale? So all of those things are still a challenge which AI has not solved. So those are the things where we as humans are still needed.
Let's talk about a little more about your work. By the way, I saw your, video with it. I think everyone should go and watch that. Like, build your own AI agent in 10 minutes. So that has been great. And I think I would really appreciate viewers to go and watch that. And I think, yeah, for at Boomi, I think we also talked a little about when we met, right? And in a personal level. So like Boomi has been doing a lot of integration with, very, very, very intelligent system. And that has been the core for Boomi. And real world scenarios, as you said, it's really, easy to write a prompt, but it's really hard to actually make it work in real world scenarios. So what has been a fundamental difference in building these pipelines? So we previously had, let's say, ML pipelines, orders and trees, or regression systems. Now building these agentic system, how has that been a very, fundamental difference?
Yeah, I think so. Bhumi's core idea was automation, right? Integration, automation, and people who are not familiar with Bhumi probably they're familiar with tools like N8N or a Zapier. They have been there. N8N is fairly new. So when we talk about agents, to put it in very simple terms, it's just doing combining the knowledge of an LLM and doing some sort of automation with that. So automation part was already something that we did as our core. We are creating processes that automate something, and you were doing it with a drag and drop button previously. Then we made that experience like, okay, let's use the LLM's knowledge, make it conversational. Let users ask, I want to simple case, I want to send an email whenever a customer, like let's say your customer chatbot, right? Like you want to automate that and you just do it with conversational experience. Then we are like, okay, how can we make it more agentic and autonomous? Like we don't even need that conversation now. Something gets triggered and it automatically, without human intervention, the agent is, think of it as your coworker who automatically understands like, okay, this email has come from the customer. That is a trigger for me. And I need to call the LLM, understand the question, what it asks, and take an action on behalf. So adding that action on behalf of human intervention is what it makes it agentic. Now it can be more smarter with when it comes to context of having memory, past interaction, and all of that, which ChatGPT does now. It can access all of your conversations, history, and give a very specific answer. So the context of memory and all of that makes it more smarter. So at Boomi, what we did, we've been using to build like an agent. We under the hood we are using all different models of Claude, and we built like an agentic framework where every time you come to the platform, now you no longer have to do the drag and drop anymore. You can also create your own agent. So you come to the platform, we have like an agent designer, and you can create your own agent for whatever purpose. It's not just like Boomi specific. So you have all of these integration processes and you want them to talk to each other. So you can create an agent which says that every time I get this email response from the customer, I want to send them an automated email, do some data transformation, and then maybe do like a LinkedIn post after it, like if that's your goal. So you can create tool calls. So you can select which model you want to use. We have a couple of options. You can select which tool you want to use, like is it calling the Gmail API or whatever different APIs under the hood. You can configure, and then you can also select what is the tonality. If you want to set some guardrails, like you can say that my agent should not answer any PII related questions or anything controversial. It's just supposed to answer email and customer related question. You can add those guardrails as well. If you want to bring your own set of guardrails or rules, you can import that as well. And then you deploy it. And once you deploy it in just 4 steps, like agent definition, goal, which LLM to use, what tools to use, deploy, and that's done. That's what you are pretty much in 10 minutes. You can build your own agent. Yeah.
Oh, great. Like, so how has that been very different from, let's say, for deploying an ML pipeline with an agent? So, for example, you talked about, building drag and drop thing. So now it's more like, and I feel it like in more like in a multi-agent system where, let's say, user is typing something and you have to understand what he's trying to say, and you might have lots of context over there, right? So what would be what's your design, look like when you're creating all these multi-agent system.
So multi-agent framework, I mean, we've done a lot of like experimentation with to come up with like a hybrid approach right now. So we know that LLMs are good at reasoning, but they are not essentially very, very strong, or we can't 100% rely on them on classifications. For our classification of intent, we are still using a machine learning model. The reason being that we've experimented with the best LLMs. There is still some sort of hallucination, and still uh, there is uncertainty which we can't rely on. And our use cases, we are not a chat GPT, right? So we have, let's say, even when we have 20 different use cases that we answer, we are not the platform you come to when you want to know, hey, what should I cook for lunch, right? That's not our forte. So we know that there are like these different 20 classes that we want to answer, and we have so much data to train on to make our machine learning models very robust in handling these different 20 intent classes. We can augment it with like more semantic knowledge, building maybe like a rack pipeline on top of it. But so far, our models are very, very robust enough to handle those 20 classes, and anything outside of those 20 classes we don't care about it. So we are saying, frame it in different way or whatever. This is our guide. Use these kind of tonality to ask questions. So we have these ML models at the beginning to handle the intent sort of classification, and I think it's a good idea to keep it like that and not rely on the LLMs completely. We also tried a hybrid approach where we have multiple LLMs. So let's say there's a high level intent classification where the first layer of LLM is understanding whether it's related to Boomi integration or it's related to some question answer. So a couple of high level, and then we dive deep, and then we dive deep. So there are like multiple LLM layers to handle. That's also approach we've tried that worked better for us. But I wouldn't rely the intent just to be completely given to LLM to answer. That's the first layer. After that, building the whole agentic framework is fairly straightforward. It's more we are using the under the hood we are using LLM for only reasoning sort of tasks. But anything that comes to like we have tool calling and all of that, that is handled entirely via code. So that part is more robust, than the only thing we are using LLM is for reasoning. Everything else is using a traditional machine learning or like a script based, which is completely robust and scalable.
Interesting. So it's like LLM is very, unpredictable, what they can do, anything and sort of, but to make their actions more, more realistic and predictive, what the next action could be. So you have actually trained these small, ML pipelines, which actually make the whole pipeline more predictable, what actions they are taking and everything. Oh, quite interesting. What has been the role of memory in these things? So you mentioned that is morely for reasoning, right? So, would love to know, you talked about, I think, one or two times about memory. So how does like memory actually plays a very key role in those reasoning steps?
Yeah, I mean, memory, that's been the next frontier. I feel people are researching on that. Like, how can we make memory more robust? Is it long term and short term? Like previously, when we used to have when LSTMs and all of these models came, and even the concept of attention came, it was like, how do you selectively pay attention to what's important and remove the noise? And that was a breakthrough back then, because we don't want so much of data and the models not to understand what context to look into. But now with LLMs, where the compute has basically not been that big a concern, you're pretty much looking at two types of memory, short term and long term. And I think a good approach would be for something more smarter with a hybrid approach. I don't want the memory to be like, look at all my, like ChatGPT is looking at all my history, all my conversations. It does perform well because it has the power of compute. But can we be a little bit more smarter in understanding what to pick from the noise, right? Some sort of hybrid approach where it has a threshold of maybe 10,000 tokens or whatever, but it understands my tonality and my nature, or make it so customizable that it understands me so well that it can give me very good answers, but does not need to learn everything. It should be intelligent enough to understand, picking up what from the, like removing the noise and picking up what's important.
Yeah, very interesting. Do you guys use any frameworks for developing all these very complex systems? It sounds so complex, So for example, we have been working with a lot of companies out there, and debugging them is quite really, hard. So, you have a maybe planner agent, you have some execution agent, and and the tasks are like really open-ended. For Boomi, it might be, even a bigger open-ended task that any customers can come and ask anything. So how have you been guys coping up with that?
So when we started building this agent, we were exploring a lot of frameworks, like Crew AI and all of these agent platforms. But we wanted to build something of our own because we also want to provide this capability of building an agent, monitoring, observability. We got lucky that we partnered with AWS very throughout our, since past 5 years, and we got hands on to whatever new thing that came up, like prompt caching is there now, how to, rags and fine tuning everything. And all these tools enabled us to build our own agent designer, our own agent executor, our own sort of like this control tower, which is our observability and monitoring of these agent platform. So under the hood, we are using AWS services and tools, but everything is our own. So we did explore and learn from all these agent frameworks. Like through AI, had a initial discovery call, but then we decided like let's do something of our own and have the autonomy. So yeah, we built our own agent designer, our own agent monitoring, our own agent execution.
Oh, great. So you guys actually build all these tools in-house because you needed flexibility in sort of things and everything. Oh, nice.
I mean, we worked with all these different frameworks and understood how they are doing, what they are doing. But then we were like automation has been our like industry, right? Like this
Yeah.
agent idea of automating things, combining with knowledge of LLM. Automation is our core, like you said. Like Bhumi has been doing automation for what, like 20 years now. So this is an area where we want to take the leap, and uh, be the first ones amongst our competitors to own that entire stack.
Got it. So I think you have been more talking about like compliance and having integrating these responsible AI into the system. So what is the first step that when any initiatives come for enterprise forward? So how do you think about what, okay, this sounds very fancy, right? So we can create very fancy demos very soon, and it works for maybe few of the cases, but it's not a end of scalable and not an enterprise grade. So what's your first step that you might take for taking that responsible AI step?
Yeah. I mean, I've been talking about it because I knew this is going to become very important once enterprises mature with AI. And then everybody will talk about, hey, what about PII? What about, bias in the existing data that we have? What about explainability and all of these? This is going to become very important very soon. So we, at least in our company, we realized it fairly soon. And the minute we had an MVP, we were like, okay, how do we establish guardrails? How do we make sure nothing personal goes out when we are answering? Because LLM hallucinates and it's trained on so much data. What if it sends out some customer's data and gives it to some other customer inquiring about it? So our goal was to ensure that our guardrails are in place, and we wanted to make sure our suggestions are explainable. So, like how you see these reasoning models, we have something similar. We show the entire trace of why our agent or why our agent is giving you this particular recommendation. We show you what it's thinking. Now a lot of LLMs do that, so that explainability and transparency was like one of the key things we added at the beginning of our agent builder as well. So when you ask our agent any question, it will show you what it's thinking, what is the trace, what all tool it's calling behind the scenes, so you have very fairly good clarity on how it's working behind the scenes. So explainability and transparency was there, and we also made sure that we set up guardrails. So we've had this instance where we have used a lot of our data, but we've masked all of our customer data, so nothing is used in the training except like the high level knowledge. So we are not giving, of course, any personal data like name and demographic information or any address or any of the personal information. Everything is masked, so that is not there, but still sometimes LLM hallucinates and creates something of their own. So we established like very good guardrails, and that also we have created of our own, because we've tried with existing platforms, but certain things such as these responsible AI, I don't think it's mature enough to just plug and play, right? There are so many nuances and intricate details uh, that are company specific. That can't be like our PII looks significantly different from a lot of other PII, and we have multiple other things that we can't expose. So coming up with our own set of guardrails was very important as what we can expose to the customers, and anything which is outside the boundary of, people try to play with AI and try to go outside of what they're supposed to ask. So we make sure that all of those scenarios are handled very elegantly. So yeah, that was important for us. So even in our training of our data, uh, luckily in our case, we are not an industry where there is a lot of bias, in the sense like it's integration processes. So it's not like there can be a gender bias or like these common types of biases in our data. So we didn't have that kind of problem. The biases we had was, okay, these kind of processes are more than Y type of processes, which is fine because that truly reflects what kind of questions people ask more. So that kind of bias was fine. So we didn't have much issue in bias fixing.
So, what's the right time that people should start thinking about these guard railings and things? Because a lot of times, company don't even think about that when they are put into the production, right? So, for according to you, like, what's the right time? Even like building a guardrail, I think it's a big task that you guys have must have done, training that data and extracting all sort of things. So maybe what's the right time? And even should they build something in house? Or get something off shelf, so yeah, or make that call as you said, right? So for you the PI data might look very different, right? And then you might, okay, you know what, we might have to and go and build ourselves. So yeah, what's the right threshold?
Yeah, I mean, this build versus buy question is very difficult to answer because it really depends on the company's size and competitors. Luckily, in our case, we are enterprise, so we are not like a small scale startup that needs to move very fast compared to competitors. So if you're a startup and you know that even matter of days can cost you, then I would say maybe buy things like responsible AI. Even though it's key, I feel it's key to a system, but it's probably not. Again, depends on the industry. Like for my industry, like the bias was not a problem. Like a lot of people, if you're intricate data itself, and data has bias, right? Data has, at least they have gender and race bias, that is for sure. So if you are an industry where these things matter, like let's say you're an interviewing platform, right? Like, and if I upload my resume and then you say that you give me 4 job recommendations versus somebody who's of a privileged gender or something like that, and they get 10. That itself, for you, the bias is very, very important, like for your industry and the use case you're solving. So if you are of that industry, I would say fixing your data is the first step that you need to do. So responsible AI becomes crucial. But for industry like us, it is important. It is still important to create guardrails, but not as crucial as some like resume kind of industry. And at the same time, for us, we can take a little bit more time because firstly, we are enterprise grade, and our industry, there are like 6 7 key players, right? They're not like 100 players, and we know we still have an edge. So that's why we decided to build our own. But like again, if you're a startup that needs to move really fast, and if you're in an industry where there are 100 different players, probably buy it.
And one of the example that you took right now, I think recently a news came for Workday, I think about and they have a lawsuit now about that. So even like detecting bias is a big thing. As you said, you're making it explainable about like going through the steps. What are the steps that I took? And then, okay, you know what, it led to that. And having biases, detecting bias is also a big thing. And as you said, detecting, having the right guardrails is also a very big step. So how do you even build these systems which can, so as you said, like one of the things that you mentioned was when you're training this data, you keep away from that VIA data that you have, right? But even like, how do you know that in your production it is not happening right now when you're shipping these things, or biases are not happening? Because you don't know biases is there in your system until someone goes and read it. So maybe you can give a little, put a light on that a little.
So I think having worked in data for such a long time, there are some intricate biases that all of data scientists, or even in working in the industry, that they exist. Like that, let's say ChatGPT is trained on like trillions and trillions of GB of data. But what is this data? This is data that is coming from all our conversations, all the Google searches, all everything. And all of that data has some intricate bias, primarily because of the bias that exists in society, right? So there is let's say if there is a job description, I know that only 20 to 30% will be female applicants. And not that because females are not aware of these. It's just the intricate nature of women to under promise themselves, and like only if I match 100% of the categories, I will apply. So I know when I look at the job applicants, I see, okay, there are 2 women and 10 male, right? And even when you look at race, so these are like common biases that exist in the society that most of us are aware of, or people who have worked a little bit with data know that these demographic biases definitely exist. Um, so that you need to fix immediately before even you start training your model, because it's coming from the data. The source itself is corrupted. So, I mean, there are so many ways to clean that up, right? Like you can maybe augment your data with similar, like the imbalance class, you can balance it, or you can reduce the size of your data. Uh, there are ways to augment or reduce the size of the data. So you have to clean at the data level itself, because you know that these bias, you will train the model and then you figure out, oh, there is bias, and then go back. You have to clean the data because the model is learning from the data itself. So data level cleaning has to happen, and the sooner it does, sooner the better. Of course, common biases that we are aware of, all of us can do at the beginning, but there are things like you said, we discovered things in production, right? Like, okay, these processes, people are asking and we don't have enough information about them. So we go back and fix. There are things that are beyond your control, which you figure out in production, but common things like which everybody is aware of, that can be done at the data level at the beginning itself.
Correct. You might have seen the Google case where they had to pause the image generation part, that they went live some time back. So has something similar has happened with Boomi? As let's say you shipped something, and then you're seeing the output. Okay, we need to let's pause this agent or this project internally, and let's rethink everything from ground up. Has that like, and even like what might have triggered that as well?
No, not that of that extent has happened, but I mean, we have been Nothing related to the bias has happened with us, but we did face an issue where, like our the explanation that we have, like the trace that we show, is hallucinating a little bit. So it's not something that customers observed, and it's something that we ourselves observed when we were like just testing after rolling out. And it does, when you push something in production and you have to roll back and then push it again, it's not like a 5-minute thing, right? That only takes like hours because it has to go through the entire cycle. It goes to the development, then QA, then it goes to, and it needs a lot of approval of people. So it does take some time, but we were lucky enough to identify it ourselves rather than like a customer reporting. We've also had a case where the AI hallucinated and gave some other random information. So you're asking about process A, it's telling about process B. Luckily, the PII and all is handled. But if I'm asking about, I want to connect process A to B and you're giving me process Z to X, it's totally irrelevant. So that's when we learned that, okay, we can't completely rely on AI. And we have to, before we send it out to the user, we need to do some sanity check. So we have like a sanity check to make sure the answer is related to the question. So even with AI being so smart today, we have guardrails for checking responsible explainability and also checking the answer makes sense. Is it something random, totally unrelated to the question or not? So yeah, we did have that case and we did roll back, but luckily we identified it ourselves.
That's awesome, man. I think we talked a little about explainability, so maybe you can put a little explain that in detail that how these explainability systems are actually been created at Boomi, and how do even people approach creating explainability? Because I think like it's a very vast term, right? That how you approach it might be not just the words that how it arrived, maybe the information that it pulled from and everything. Maybe you can explain it better.
Sure. I mean, traditionally, all the machine learning models, we've been calling them like they are black boxes. What do they do under the hood? We don't understand. And to be honest, a lot of people don't need to understand the math and the stats behind it. It's unless you're an engineer working on the improving the model, you don't need to understand that. But to some extent, you need to understand how the model is thinking and why it's thinking and why it's creating the response it does. So when people want to start working with explainability, they can start with simple frameworks, like there are two popular ones like Lime and Sharp. And these both libraries are basically, think of it as, if I'm using a neural network, complex neural network, and I know the input and the output, these libraries are understanding the input and the output and making a very simpler model do the same. So instead of going through that complex neural network, they are mirroring the same learning through a simpler model. So then they explain you, because simpler model is easy to understand for anybody. They say that this is how the model works. These are the parameters. Let's say you are doing the resume use case, right? Then the model can say that, hey, your experience, your bachelor's degree in computer science is a key indicator. That's a very important feature. And why is it an important feature? Because in all of these 10 use cases, 9 out of 10 times, the candidate was selected because of this. So those kind of explainability, because this is very easy for anybody to understand, like what is a feature, why is it important, and why the model predicted that. So this kind of human-like explanation where you're telling what feature is important, why is important, and why did you give me a certain recommendation, that level can be done with simpler libraries like Lime and Sharp. Now, in our use case, we of course use LLMs and more intricate layers of rule-based intelligence we added on top of these LLMs. But to start with explainability, I think these open source libraries are a good place to start, understand the features, and you can see they also give you importance in terms of percentage and ranking. So which feature is important than the other. So you can understand the explainability and create your own sort of verbose explanation based on the recommendation.
Makes sense. For Bhumi and for you, what is actually model governance in the system? What type of governance to define and model to follow? As we said, it can from community to community, it can differ, right? So for Bhumi, what's that?
So, like I said, like Boomi has partnered with AWS for all their governance stack, and we use their own monitoring, model drift, metrics. We have our own set of defined metrics as well, which they allow us to add every time any model drift in performance happens, wherein your accuracy and these common metrics go and our own set of defined metrics go down. Anytime there is any like high scalable, like let's say 10,000 users, doesn't happen, but they come and together ask, there's like a spike. So all of these things we are monitoring, and anytime there's a large influx of users using our platform, we have notifications sent. Anytime our model drifts in like X number of parameters or metrics that we have defined, we get a notification. We have a fallback model as well, in case our model is hallucinating or not performing that well. Like our fallback is like a safer model that we know it works not as good as our best model, but safer. So we have a fallback model that comes. We also have a simple ML model, forget all the LLM. Like if just in case things break, the second fallback for just that kind of cases. Anytime there is like a issue reported, or user report any bug, we are tracking that as well. So we use AWS governance stack for this and observability. Uh, on top of that, we have added our own metrics that we want to track, which are not covered in. I mean, AWS helps us track basic model performance drifts, but sometimes you need a little bit more than that. So we've added some of that. But so far, yeah, all of the AWS governance stack is what we are using.
Nice. Let's talk about compliance as well, compliance of data, and without putting everyone to sleep. Right. So, what does robust compliance looks like for you for handling for your all your AI workflows? Because you might be calling a lot of tool calling. Then again, there is a lot of data involved, and everything. And how do you actually have a technical audit trail for everything as well? So they make sure that all the compliances throughout your tooling layer is check in place.
Yeah, I mean, that has been a little bit tricky for us because even when you're thinking about, like, we are using AWS stack, but when we looked at like our logs and all our trails, we saw that like we are capturing a lot of like customer information in that, and that we don't want to do that. So we did go back and roll back and figure out where all can we, even in our logs and everywhere, we don't want, because a lot of engineers have access to all of those logs and stuff. So we did mask everything. So anything that comes in our logs is again masked, because in our use case, customers are asking, I want to make changes to my process and change it to this, and they might give something like PII as well. So we don't want that log also to be tracked, having that intent with that PII information, because any of the engineers or anybody in our team should not be able to access it. So we do have checks for that. So every time the intent comes, we are checking if there is no PII or anything that can go, and we mask it. And even in your in our all our logs and everything, you don't see any of those things. It's masked. So that's one way. It did take us. We did roll out to production to figure that out. But that's one thing that we are doing. Sorry, what was the question? And maybe I'm digressing.
Yeah, I think the same thing that you said, like talk about how do you handle all these trails, as you said, right? I think you said few things on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of things are currently we have automated. We encountered these situations, and then we figured out it was not like when we were building it, we were aware of it. And when we encountered these situation and saw these log trails, we were like, okay, this cannot come. We need to remove this, and we masked all of it. Everything right now, we have built like scripts for it. We don't know if there is a better way to, automate it. If there is, we would be happy to learn that.
Do you think there should be some, maybe industry standard or best practices, or you do think it's very too early for having that lock-in?
There should be, because it looks like it's a small problem, but in enterprise scale, it does take a lot of time, and you don't anticipate certain situations, right? That you get to know after you roll out in production. So if there is some industry standardized way, then we already know what are the set of possibilities, and we can deal with it early on.
Got it. And what's the, maybe having a new versioning and the pipeline look like? So have you set up any, annotated data in house, or, any checks in place? And there are multiple checks, as you said, right? Governance is there, in multiple evaluation is there, even like agent should work the way it should work. So how have you created that whole pipeline in versioning and checking? Okay, you know what? I created this model or this agent pipeline. This is better than that. And then we should ship it or not.
So we've been working with Bedrock and SageMaker for like 8 years, but Bedrock for past 3-4 years whenever it came, and they helped us really understand all of these, like easy to switch between models, because we wanted that capability. Like you said, like when things break, we've used our own sort of intelligence and experience to understand when to switch to which version, but it'll be nice to have some sort of capability to automatically figure it out, because currently we have like our best performing model, like but that model does uses the high end LLMs and memory and everything. A lot of times our customer requests are not that high, and we might not need that level of, like, we don't need Sonnet for everything probably. So if there is under the hood some flexibility in automatically figuring out, okay, this is the intent, this is probably very straightforward, let's use prompt caching. This is probably intent came recently, so we can use our caching. This intent is very simple. Let's divert it to this model version. This intent is very complex. Let's divert it to this version. If that is there, that will save us money, save us. It just make our experience with our users also smarter. Currently, it's done manually with our understanding. Okay, case one go here, case two go here. But if something is automated and smarter, that will be very good.
Makes sense. I think let's talk about a little more about your personal contribution to the community. So you have been leading, chapters in data, women in data, mentoring a lot of, data scientists in SF, and you have been both places in research and engineering communities, and that's a really, interesting combination. So what's your one advice to, women who are starting in the AI space, and how can they, really accelerate their career?
Yeah, I think one advice I have, I mean, especially for women and even everybody, is that don't look at AI. I mean, everybody is learning. So the good thing is AI is a very equalizer, because it's been in existence for probably 2.5 years. So everybody is fairly new. Whoever says I'm experienced 10 years in AI is not correct. this is it's just been here for 2.5 years. So you're still early on to learn if you want to start now. And I don't agree that courses are the right way to learn things anymore. Like when I started my journey, we used to do Coursera's and different courses and structured way of learning. I don't think that's the right way to learn anymore, because things are moving way too fast. You take a course today that's going to become irrelevant in a week. So best way to learn something today is subscribe to one newsletter, like just one newsletter, or follow certain people who talk about AI, and just understand, okay, this MCP is a new thing, like A2A is a new thing. Let me just do it, right? Rather than just reading about it, just try to implement it. Try to implement, or whatever VO3 has come up, right? Let me just play with it. And all of these tools that come early on, they give you free access or like a trial, or you have some credits to play with. So rather than spending time in going through a course, just do it. Just go to that platform, play with it a little bit. If you are stuck, you can ask ChatGPT, you can ask Google, or figure it out. That is a better way of learning than just reading Medium articles, or just YouTube tutorials. By the time you learn it, it's probably outdated. So yeah.
In the starting, you shared some personal things that, that it's really hard as a, so many brilliant, as I met other, other brilliant women as well in me, yeah. And rather than having, knowing AI or having like how to write code, actually self-doubting might be one of the, biggest thing that's a big blocker. And you navigated both academics and industry. Maybe you can share some advice to junior engineers since they are feeling right now, okay, I'm not so technical. What's your go-to, motivation have been to navigate all this?
Yeah. So that's what I tell in our women in tech and women in data communities as well. And that's why we created this community, because we want women who are by nature a little bit hesitant to reach out, little bit hesitant when it comes too technical, they feel they are, they're not worthy of it or whatever. We created this community for them to feel inclusive. And if they have anything, like the community we created is so helpful. If they want technical resources, if they want mentors, for anything, they have people to reach out to. And that's a kind of safe space we have created. When I started my data science journey, my degree was not in data science. It was very different. I tried to figure it out. How do I learn machine learning? Right. So I audited courses during my master so that I learn those things outside of my core curriculum. And you learn a lot of things on the job as well. So now being in the industry for 10 years, I look at a job description. If I look at a job description, I'm not saying I match 100% of it, right? Even if you match 7 out of 10, it's fine. You go ahead, apply, you learn on the job, right? And that's what I tell a lot of like women coming, oh, I don't match this. This is too technical for me. And I know that if there is a guy with 50% of what that girl has, he would go ahead and apply. So those kind of like, you can train them for technical skills, give them mentoring, but a major mindset change has to happen, which we are aiming for, like making them more confident, making them understand that they can learn anything and everything if they want, the power of reaching out, the power of building a community, power of asking questions. The mindset training is what we are working on, and we are seeing a change now. A lot of women are becoming more confident and reaching out, um, and I see a lot of women becoming AI founders, which is very nice to see.
That's amazing. I think you're really truly doing very great work. I hope you get a lot of DM about after this podcast, people asking about you more mentorship. And that's really great. That's really great. I think so you say agentic AI and response and autonomous agents and having accountability in them sounds two different things, right? So having a truly autonomous system at the same time making it very accountable. So are we really ready for this?
Ah, that's a good question. Um, I think we are we are almost there. I used to, my answer would have been different like a month ago, but you know, we are like, even when we were doing traditional ML models and we were getting like 95% accuracy, we didn't feel like we felt like, oh, wow, it's amazing, right? Like 95% accuracy, precision, and all that. So even now, of course, there are accountability wise, there are some hallucinations and issues with LLMs and this whole agentic pipeline here and there. But if you look at the performance metrics, they are really good. And I think it's better than many humans. So, and it's I think it's almost there. The little bit like 1-2% room of error will definitely go by the next time we talk, probably. So there are things to improve. There are things we can make better, but I think we are there where we can call our systems truly agentic and autonomous.
God. So for you, accountability, is it like domain specific or there should be some, let's say, default for every AI system that it should have in them because they're not handling everything that we have. They're handling my emails, they're handling, as you said, all type of data that is there. So is there any, domain specific, should it be domain specific or should be some defaults?
I think there should be a combination of both. I don't think for our company we can just rely on something central and call it a day. We need something central, central protocol that all AI systems, all agents follow. On top of that, you can add something more of your domain specific if you're a very niche industry, which we are. So yeah, it has to be a combination.
Yeah, makes sense. We are flooded with a lot of information that we have, then our agentic system. Now there are multimodal pipelines that are there. What is one of the some technical, hardship or technical challenges that you still feel that people are actually underestimating and that you think is it's gonna be a very big, roadblocker. It can be, for example, it can be infra, model, or even like design because I've seen talking people about, these LLMs will change how we are interacting with them. Because if you see now, a lot of API calls and tools have become very automated. I just have that. So what For you, what's that most underestimated thing?
The challenge, like you said, like I think these things are fairly straightforward. The API tool calling and all is, even if you scale it to like hundreds and thousands of tool calling, I think our systems are smart enough to handle this. I think the challenge now becomes, like you said, like when we have these multi-agent, all of these agents talking to each other, there could be some cross collaboration and cross confusion as to some agents are similar, there is some overlap. So I think there could be an issue where when we have like 20, 30, hundreds of agents collaborating with each other, context switching or not understanding which agent does what. So there would be overlap, and then three agents are simultaneously working on the same thing. So I think the design, as our systems get more and more complex, the overlap of different agents has to be handled very, very smartly. So designing of a multi-agent framework is going to get challenging as we scale our agents. That would be the number one challenge I see.
Oh, makes sense. I think that has been a lot of challenge because people have been creating a lot of agents and then how they personally interact with them and then they work. Yeah. Let's see how that pans out. I think we are mostly close to our, end of the podcast. Before we close, I think let's have some rapid fire questions for you. I've prepared some questions, just don't think a lot, just answering in some one or two lines. Yeah. If you could give the AI system a human trail, what would it be?
AI system, a human trait. I think a little bit more curiosity and not that nod along with me for everything.
Okay. What's the go-to metaphor that and how do you explain LLMs to your non-tech friends?
I would just say imagine the world's most chattiest chatbot who is, yeah, chattiest chatbot. I don't want to add adjectives to it.
Okay. So favorite moment when you were a mentor to someone and then you thought, oh, you're telling all these things to someone and you thought, oh yeah, or I know all this knowledge that so all these questions that they are asking to you.
Um, there have been a lot of moments, but I think when your mentee uh, like shares something on LinkedIn or like really appreciates you about something, that's like, you feel like, okay, I made it. I made a difference to their life.
Makes sense. If you could magically solve some problem that you have in work, what would it be?
At work, I think because I work remote and I know a lot of people work remote, the biggest challenge is having like a very good human connection. That is something that AI is not able to solve. So if there is a way we can build stronger human connections at workplace without having to meet in person, that I would be down to try that tool or whatever solution.
Awesome. So in governance, what's the first thing that you want to let's say you have a magic wand. So what's the one thing that you want to solve in governance?
I think after talking to you, maybe like some sort of causal audit trails would be nice.
Awesome. Yeah, it was great talking to you, Swagata, on this podcast. And again, thanks for taking time out from a busy schedule on this. Really, really nice to have you on this.
No, no, thank you so much. It was great chatting with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in SF and seeing how good you're doing. So, yeah,
Yeah, thanks a lot, and really all the best for your work in women in AI. I hope more people reach out to you for more mentoring and guideship. All the best for that, and and that's all for this episode. I think we'll have more episodes coming in few weeks. Keep tuned us, guys. Thanks a lot.
thank you.